Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Kanchan Malhotra, and I am the chapter lead for Edison, New Jersey, Women in Data chapter. And I am very excited to have you all here, and I hope you learn something new and find this session is inspiring. Our agenda for today is going to be as follows. I will kick off the meeting with a brief introduction of women in data, after which our first speaker, Ajit Jaokar, is going to talk to us about AI entrepreneurship, followed by which Ayşe Mutlu, our second speaker for the day, is going to talk to us about her personal AI journey, being a female in this male-dominated industry. And lastly, we'll have the question and answer session. And I would encourage all of you to unmute yourself and ask the questions. If you do not feel comfortable doing that, feel free to type in your question in the chat. I will be monitoring the chat throughout the session. Women in Data is a nonprofit organization focused on increasing diversity in data field. We do that primarily by providing awareness, education, and advancement in the tech field, primarily focusing on data science. Meet the team. So Edison chapter is a fairly new chapter. I started this chapter in the first week of July, and Sangeeta Chatterjee joined me recently as a community coordinator. So she's working to help me set up local events within the community. If you're interested in what we do and would like to participate and volunteer, please reach out to me or Sangeeta, and also connect with us on LinkedIn. So Women in Data is a community where our members range from newbies, transitioners, to data professionals. So a newbie is somebody who could be a college student pursuing computer science, currently and about to graduate and get into the data career, but need some guidance. So we have a lot of newbies in our community. And then their second class is classification is a transitioner. A transitioner is someone who is a professional with years of experience, however, now trying to get into a more data science focused role. And I am a transitioner because I have over 16 years of IT experience. However, now I am leaning towards a data-centric career. Lastly, we have data enthusiasts, people like Ayşe and Ajit, who are the experts in the industry, and they want to stay relevant and they want to become a leader in this industry. So we are a global community of over 11,000 members. As of now, we have chapters in 27 global cities within 10 different countries. And we have hosted over 100 community events so far. Today's speaker, our first speaker today is Ajit Jaokar. He is the course director of Artificial Intelligence, Cloud and Edge Implementations at University of Oxford. Along with that, Ajit is also a co-founder for feynlabs, where he works as a data scientist. Ajit has numerous other affiliations, and he's also worked with various other institutions such as London School of Economics, Universidad Politécnica de Madrid, Future Society at Howard Kennedy School of Government. Ajit is also currently working on a book to teach AI using high school mathematical foundations. Ajit is listed in the top 30 influencers for IoT for 2017. And he currently publishes extensively on KD Nuggets, Data Science Central. He is included in the top 16 influencers, top 100 blogs, top 50 IoT Central, and 19th among the top 50 Twitter IoT influencers. His PhD research is based on AI and effective computing, that is, how AI interprets emotion. Welcome, Ajit. We are excited to have you here, and we hope to learn a lot from your experience and your wisdom. Our second speaker today is Ayşe Mutlu. She works as a tutor at Oxford University. She's also working as a data scientist at feynlabs along with Ajit. And Ayşe is going to talk to us about her personal journey as a female in this male-dominated industry. Welcome, Ayşe. We're excited to have you here, and I cannot wait to listen what you have to tell all the women getting into AI and looking forward to build a career.
Thank you.
All right, Ajit, all you now.
Okay, thank you very much, and it's great to be here. So I shall now share my screen. Welcome everybody, and thank you again for the opportunity to present here. And we're going to talk about AI entrepreneurship, and this is very important because I want to first of all let you know my perspective. So the first perspective I want to say is that I'm going to talk to you about my journey, and it's a little bit like Ayşe's journey, but it's a different perspective, obviously. And I like this quote from Steve Jobs, which says the journey is the destination, because in many ways, the path you follow has a whole bunch of different sort of ups and downs, and which is what I'm going to talk to you about, especially the mistakes I have made over the last 20 years in that. The second point is that I bring a strange and a unique combination of entrepreneurship, data science, as well as being on the board of startups. So I'm on the board of a startup in New York and startup in Berlin. I'm also an academic and also have my own company. And therefore I've been in this for about 20 years, so which is possibly older than many of you have been in the industry, and therefore I think I provide that perspective as well. So first of all, I'm going to talk to you about just a brief idea of about what is and what is not AI. And I want to share this perspective because then it sort of comes to you that where I'm coming from with this. Yes. So I like to explain AI into very simple set of slides. And I generally use something like this. Is the way to train an algorithm. And the simplest way and the most inefficient way is if you anticipate every possible rule. Yes, so if you anticipate every possible rule as you do in coding, have an if then else statement for everything. Obviously, you could do it this way, but however, this is very inefficient, and of course, you cannot, in all likelihood, anticipate every rule. The second way of anticipating rules is to learn the rules from the data. And that's what machine learning is all about. So machine learning helps you to learn rules from the data, and that's how you get that idea with that. The third one is to learn both the rules and the structure from the data, and that's where deep learning comes into play. And that means that you do not explicitly identify the features for the algorithm. The algorithm is supposed to learn both the data as well as the features from the training data you provide. And lastly, and sort of more interestingly, more recently, is the idea of reinforcement learning, where you learn rules by trial and error. And this is what Google did with DeepMind and all that type of stuff. So this generally is the way I see the world of AI. And I see the world of AI as finding rules, either explicit or implicit, hidden, and things like this. So this is how I would describe AI. The second thing about AI is about problems which are not in the finite domain. So when I mean finite domain problems, I mean a problem like chess on the left-hand side. Yes, a problem like chess effectively is somewhere which is an 8x8 square, and every piece has a particular way in which it moves. And this means the world of chess is a finite domain problem. And a finite domain problem can be relatively easily solved by a computer. And this is what IBM's Deep Blue did a few years ago. So in that sense, that problem is easy for a computer. However, the problem on the right hand side is not easy for a computer. That means because however it is easy for a child, and that's because identifying a dog is not easy because the concept of a dog has too many variants to it. What that means is you could have a dog which is an Alsatian, a Doberman, a Basenji, a Wolfhound, or many different characteristics of a dog around a central theme. And while a child can understand a dog by looking at the features of a dog, a computer cannot explicitly or easily understand that until now. And this is how the basic idea of deep learning works. So it works bottom up. That means you start off looking at the characteristics of something, and then you work upwards with each layer, building up to a higher level of abstraction until you identify what the object is through backpropagation and gradient descent. So this is the classic deep learning architecture within that. And I'm quite happy to share my slides with you as well, by the way. So now, So this is how I see the world of AI. I see the world of AI as machine learning being explicitly training an algorithm, deep learning being automatic feature detection, AI meaning machines that can think and reason, which are mostly based on deep learning. Then I see the sort of the narrow AI, which is what we are doing now. Example, healthcare and things like this. And then there's the general AI, which is still the realm of science fiction. Yes, so we are not talking about general AI. For most people at the moment, we are talking about narrow AI, meaning that we are applying these deep learning concepts to specific domain and a problem statement at hand. Yes. Now, of course, AI is becoming endemic. AI is becoming everywhere. Yes. And this is the sort of thing you can see that just about everything we are doing is impacted by AI. Now, the thing about AI and startups and AI and companies is that AI is not one job, but three. Yes, effectively that you have a data engineer, a data scientist, and DevOps. And when you see the world in that way, then you see like what we teach at Oxford, for example, is more the sort of the ML ops, as what we call ML ops, meaning that you train a model, you push it into production, you validate the health of the model, and you have to retrain the model if you need to, which means that you are combining the machine learning and the DevOps functionality together, which is realistically the way most large companies run. So when you learn machine learning or deep learning, you typically operate on a notebook, and the notebook is what it is. But in production, of course, this is the different world, and many ways, both my startup world as well as in the production world, this is what you end up doing. So how do you use AI for your startups? So this is my first perspective. Yes. So what that means is, let's start a little bit behind. Yes. So let's look at the meaning of a startup. So many of you may not remember this, but or maybe you do. It's the sort of the year 2000 era was quite an interesting time when people actually thought the world as we know it was going to come to an end on the 1st of Jan 2001, when everything was going to go away. Yes. And then there is the mobile world. So we that was the second wave after the first wave of the internet, the dot-com era. And then there was the mobile wave, which I think is still has to play itself fully. But that started sort of around the 2007 timeframe when Steve Jobs and iPhone and app stores launched with that. And then the question is, realistically, when we talk about startups, is it all about riding the next wave? Yes, because we have those two waves, and then the question is it just about finding out the next shiny object? And by extension, is AI the next shiny object? I.e., is this just another of those waves? And yes, it is, and no, it is not. And this is my point about it. That the point about AI is that it is going to affect everything we do, and it's going to embed itself into everything we do, and therefore it will not be a wave which will go away. And this is partly I come from. However, from a startup point of view, most of the startups do sort of tend to ride a wave, and this is where we come from with that. So from what would be my advice for startups? And this is fairly obvious when you read it, but it is not obvious if it is not explicitly told to you. The first one is that you must design something which improves with experience. And that's the fundamental aspect of either machine learning or deep learning, which means that the user number two has to have a better experience than user number one, because user number two has benefited from the data you or insight you gained from user number one. Yes, and if you do not have something which improves our experience, then basically you do not have an AI startup. Yes, so you have something which is not capturing the experience of every user so that the consequent user benefits. And Google and just about everything else is based on that. But if you do not have that model, then you don't have a model behind your startup, and therefore you don't have an AI startup. The second one is about the model is the IP. So when I say the model, I mean that is the data and the algorithm trained together. Yes. So that is effectively your intellectual property. And most of the startups I work with or advise tend to have that sort of a mindset with that. It doesn't matter what you do, whether you're doing genomics or whether you're doing fraud detection. In any case, your model, that is your data and your algorithm, is your core IP. The next one is you should either own a body of data or enrich a body of data, even if you don't own the data. So for example, I could say that I So Google's the best example of this. Yes. So if I link to you, then obviously the link is owned by me and I could unlink you. However, the algorithm, which is effectively PageRank, which drives the search engine, is owned by Google. And Google then subsequently synthesizes that data to produce some insights, even if it does not own the data. So this is an important point there, is that you do not need to own the data. However, you could own the data. You could enrich the data somehow. The next one is that you need to solve a hard problem, but not like a Netflix challenge. So the Netflix challenge is something which most people would know. Uh, but what they don't know is that while the Netflix challenge was solved by a couple of academics, the solution was not feasible to be implemented commercially by Netflix. So my point here is that sometimes when you solve a solution from a purely academic or research point of view, it actually is not a good commercial solution. Yes, so as a startup, you have to think about the commercial solution and not how technically cool and sexy it is in terms of sort of what you're trying to do with that. The last one is that you must improve and demonstrate the business state of art. So again, we are not forgetting that we are a commercial startup, and therefore it must look at the state of the art. So if you're looking at fraud detection, if you're looking at genomics, if you're looking at any of these fields, they all have a current KPI. Yes, so they all have a current state of the art, in which they say that this is where my startup is, this is what the industry average is, or so on and so forth. And what you then do is you need to sort of try to see how you better this and how you improve this state of art with that. So the next one is, if you are an SME, what do you do with that? If you're an SME, then of course you have a slightly different approach, but not too dissimilar. And what you are doing there is that you can and understand AI. You can apply it within products. You can think of process automation. You can think of AI in existing products, especially when you can automate sections of that. You can look at cloud platforms. Most of the cloud platforms make your life easy. You can look at machine learning instead of deep learning, because many problems can be solved very well with machine learning without having to resort to deep learning, which is a more complex and a more expensive solution from there. So this is generally how I would see the world as it stands, and this would be my advice as a general startup. But now we're going to look at entrepreneurship. Yes, so I'm going to kind of take a step back now, and I'm going to again share you some of my experiences as I conclude this one. So what I'm trying to talk to you about is there is a concept of AI which is happening, and I'm saying that it is the next big thing, and it's already here with us. But let us look at business in general. Yes, so for example, so this is Taylor's, which is a coffee shop in Oxford. So when Ayşe and I once were having coffee, that is around the corner from where we teach, and we noticed a couple next to us talking about cats, and it turned out to be that the couple was talking about Schrodinger's cat. Yes, so Schrodinger's cat is a quantum mechanics concept. Yes, my point there is that if you work in AI or things like these, like Oxford and so on and so forth, you are an outlier, because normal people talk about normal cats, not Schrodinger's cats. Yes, but this is our world, and there's many ways that we forget that this is not the world of other people. And for example, I saw these Amazon resellers recently, and it's incredible how much money they're all making with this one. And you have to think that this is the world which exists. It sells things like Play-Doh, it sells like a product on the left, and so on and so forth. And the point about that is there is a whole world out there with business being conducted in a different way. And we are perhaps, first of all, when we think about entrepreneurship, we need to understand that entrepreneurship is much older than AI, for example. So the key here is that these products are real, people are buying them, therefore there is a need for them. Historically, if you look at things like Think and Grow Rich or any of those sort of entrepreneurship ideas, you basically found a need and you filled it. Yes, so that's what the Amazon resellers are doing, and that's why they're doing well. The current startup ecosystem normally looks at anticipating a need and trying to understand what that need is going to be in the future, which may or may not materialize. And therefore, the current system, perhaps as we are looking at it, the whole VC funded ecosystem, forces you almost to think about something conceptual in the future and then grow very fast, not from a customer perspective, from a from a potential barrier to entry perspective. And of course, there are some who win very big. Amazon, Google are the ones who have won big, but then there are many, many more who do not. And this was my epiphany, which is what I realized looking at that is perhaps I'm good perhaps at building a business. Building a business in entrepreneurship is quite different from the current startup ecosystem. Yes, so the current startup ecosystem will continue, in my opinion. However, many of these companies who are being funded will go on a certain trajectory as they have in the dot-com era and as they have in the mobile era, and most of that is not, may or may not be entrepreneurship as you look at it pre-web. So then you think about what from my experience was kind of looking back at it, what could I do, which was sort of what I know. So Acres of Diamond is an interesting book which talked about how you can find value just in your backyard, so to speak. And what I thought about there was sort of looking at what I do is looking at how we teach maths at Oxford and looking at how we can teach AI using maths. And this is something I've been really passionate about, including working with people with autism and things like this. So this is something I'm building at a startup. And that is something which I think is my journey coming from over 20 years and trying to understand what I'm trying to do and trying to understand what I should be doing. But this is archetypal, I think. It is archetypal of a lot of people, a lot of journeys, having seen through that. So where does AI come into place? By the way, AI does come into place a lot into just about anything. In our case, what I'm trying to do is look at the tutorial system. Tutorial system is a very specific thing to Oxford. I'm trying to duplicate that in an online concept. A tutorial system is something where you work very closely with small groups of people, and that has been around for 800 years in Oxford. I'm trying to look into that and look at emotion detection and things like that online, and trying to duplicate that experience in a much more closer setting to learn AI. So I'll leave you now with a video. So, okay, you should be able to hear the sound now.
How special, how wondrous, how mysterious, how complex, how glorious, how phenomenal you are. And you get no credit messing in somebody else's territory or trying to have power over something you have no control. Another one of my favorite teachings is The Wizard of Oz. When the Wicked Witch of the West says, go away from here because you don't have any power here, you have no power in any territory other than your own. Oh, but you are the master of that. You get to be the master of your own fate. You get to be the captain of your own soul. And if you just manage that, if you just took care of your territory, oh, the glorious glory.
So this is what I want to end with that. My point here is that being an entrepreneur is all about the joy and the journey and the fun. Yes, and we should not forget that, and the fact that we as creators of something new are building new value into something else, and this is something we should never forget as making a difference with that. So
thank you so much, Ajit. This was very informative. And Ayşe, you're up next.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I am Ayşe Mutlu. I'm working with Ajit Jaokar in a startup, feynlabs.ai. Today, I'm going to share with you my AI journey, and also I'm going to share some of the insights with you. First of all, I would like to thank Women in Data for giving me this opportunity, and thanks for listening to me. Let me give you some of the background about me. Now I'm based in London, in UK. I come from Turkey, place called Bursa. It is close to Istanbul. I do hold European passport, European Union passport, so that was easy for me to migrate to this country. I studied industrial engineering. I gained math and coding knowledge during my engineering studies. I did my final project, which was to do with augmented reality. So that gave me a kind of interest to get into the software and computer science world. Before coming to London, after my graduation, I did work as a project engineer in a company, Nestle, but it had nothing to do with software. But I had always keen eagerness to get into the software, more specifically to the AI, because of the kind of the solutions you can provide, which make a difference in people's life, and for the kind of technology offers. So with that thing in my mind, I motivated myself, and I started to explore and study about AI. I used to attend local hackerspace and meetups in my hometown. So in there we had a team, and we decided to take an online course. It is from Andrew Ng. He's from Stanford University. We took deep learning course, and we completed this course in 3 months. It was very effective time, and it was kind of a boot camp for us, and it equally motivated each one of us. And with that motivation, one of the team members decided to go to the abroad to do a PhD. One of the team members set up a startup, and it motivated also me. And I decided to come to the London to expand my career skills and to help myself to improve my English. Even though I was good at English, I needed to be more fluent. So this decision was the beginning of my AI career, actually. So I moved to London in early Jan 2018. Coming to London would definitely boost my career skills. I started to attend meetups related to computer science, artificial intelligence, and deep learning. And also London is an amazing city that you can find different kinds of meetups in London every day. So also I met Ajit in one of the meetups. It was fortunate to meet Ajit. And after the meetup, we had a chat, and we noticed that we could work together. So then I started to work with him, and that increased my motivation more. And that's how I got my first job in AI, through the meetups. While working with Ajit, I always had keen, I always wanted to explore more about AI. And after working some time with Ajit, I started to contribute to Oxford Cloud and Edge implementation course. Initially, I was joining the lectures, and I was only contributing, and I was responsible for all the coding and development sprints. And now I'm currently involved as a tutor. And then we started to work with Microsoft. We are mainly building AI for the edge devices, and we are using Azure Sphere. It is an IoT kit, and it is to do with cybersecurity domain. And we are working on the IoT anomaly detection for 5G networks, and we are using deep learning and machine learning algorithms on that. So overall, I've explained how I got my first job and how I get into the AI. And here I will share some of the insights with you on the things which I've achieved so far. The first thing is coding and engineering the maths. These are hard skills, but well worth mastering. My engineering degree helped me to master these elements. The next thing is learning from community. Like I said, I used to attend meetups and hackerspace, even in hometown and in London. I have learned a lot from the participation in the community. And the other thing is self-studying. It is the key aspect of the career steps. I spent lots of time doing self-studying, and I kept learning by going to libraries in London in daily. And at the same time, I was working to get settled in London. The other insight is Oxford. Being in Oxford was challenging for me initially, and presenting in Oxford was challenging also. But I also learned a lot, both through the teaching and mentoring the Oxford students. And the last thing is AI. It is hard, but it is very fun. When I started with it, I knew that it is going to be future. I mentioned Andrew Ng in the beginning of my presentation. He said that AI is the new electricity. As you know, electricity transformed all the sector, and he says that AI will do the same. So I wanted to be the part of this revolution as well. And let me share some of the insights. Women in AI face many challenges. As per the statistics, by 2020, more than 2.7 million data scientists job openings are forecast. This is only in the US alone. When we look at the UK, women represents only 47th of the workforce, which is good. But when we look at the technical jobs, women represents only 17% of the workforce. We can see the huge gap here. This could be because of the gender pay gap, because of the slow career progression for women, male-dominated office culture, or lack of the access to the mentors and gender bias in hiring. However, many researchers have underlined the benefits of the gender equality in the workplace. And also there are many excellent female roles in AI. Here I have the list of the women who has been doing a great job in AI. Here, all I want to mention is these all are coming from the different backgrounds. Also, I'm not coming from the AI background, but it is only about what you want to do right now. It is not about what you have done before. So if you have a motivation, you just need to go for it. And here I have some of the references from the Oxford student and from the partners. As you can see here, even in a short time, 1.5 years, I am in this field, in the AI field, and I've made up a very good network. And it feels great honor to get such a great feedback from the students and the partners. And here I have some of the photographs from the Oxford course. I had a really good time by teaching and mentoring the students. And also our next batch is starting in the September, and I'm already working for it. So, yes. Yeah, before ending up, I just want to say, I believe that if I can do it, coming from non-AI background and from being an immigrant in this country, I feel like everyone who has desire can do that. Everyone can achieve and enter the field of AI. Thanks for listening to me. And here we have, these are our online courses. You can study with us. These are all online. So if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Ayşe.
Yeah,
this was really great. And I really love the message that you ended with, which is basically, it doesn't matter what you've done in the past. It's what you choose to do now and where you want to take it. So I love that. So, so like Ayşe said, if you have any questions, people, please put your questions in the chat box or feel free to unmute yourself and ask the questions.
My first question here is, yes, first of all, the slides will be available. We have already shared them with you, and feel free to share that. The recording is also available, and yeah, feel free to connect to us on LinkedIn and anything like that. All of that is perfectly fine with that. And so the question is, the first one is, so this is from Harmeet. Yes, I'm a health data insight. Thank you. The question is how to build a model that is a trade-off between performance and interpretability. That's a very good question from Harmeet. So the first question is about building a model between performance and interpretability. So I think that the short answer is that interpretable models are a huge thing at the moment, especially in healthcare. The longer answer is that there is a lot of discussion about this. There is a book which is free. If you possibly connect to me, or I can share it afterwards with that. There's a free book by a University of Munich researcher who talks about interpretable models, but this is generally becoming quite a thing anyway. And there are many ways to achieve interpretability. The key being that in the deep learning model are historically not interpretable by the nature of how deep learning works, because it's a sort of the way you build weights and biases. However, you often build interpretability by asking other models to go with that. So you can incorporate that within your discussion. But maybe if you want to connect, we can share with that. So I'm going to I look forward to seeing the diversity. We're curious for all the women here. Okay, so Matthew, okay, that's fine. That is not a question. If I begin a startup, where should I begin? Okay. So I think that from a startup point of view, I would say I shared with you my mistakes, yes. And my mistakes were I was trying to do many things which other people are doing, and that always is a challenge. I think coming to AI startups, I think you should begin with trying to understand what data you can model. So looking at a particular phenomena, or looking at a particular process, can you figure out can you capture data in such a way that you can mimic that process and do it better? So think about a lawnmower, for example. Can I take a picture of the lawn and try to see if I can automate this process of lawn mowing using an algorithm? Or you can think about that way for any type of problem, and you can work with it like that. So if you can find data to model the problem, then you can find increasingly better algorithms to work with that. And one of the things we find, of course, is that you can get a certain level of accuracy very quickly, but then to increase that accuracy is a whole different problem from there. That's another thing as well with that. So what I mean there is that think about the state of the art in the industry and how you can improve that. Yeah, we can share some more resources, what
Yes.
we generally think
And
about.
this
With
course
that. Yeah.
was free. Just if you want to take the certification, just you need to pay for it, but it was all free. So you don't need to pay anything, and it is really good course.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we have covered the questions which are listed in the chats. We'll now take more questions just generally. Yeah.
Thank you, Ajit and Ayşe, for that. So I have a few questions for both of you.
Yeah.
So Ajit, I am really interested to learn more about the book that you're writing, about how you want to teach AI using the high school math. So if you could elaborate a little bit more, what's your target audience and what you're trying to achieve with this book, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So I think I've been trying to do this for a few years now, and it all started off with a particular module we teach at my course. So in Oxford, the audience for our course is industry professionals. Yes. So we are not teaching a pure academic course, although there are people sometimes who are doing a PhD who join our course, but I find typically people who join our course to be engineers. And the thing is that if you have done any sort of maths or engineering or science degree, you have learned even 15 years ago, 10 years ago, linear algebra, probability theory, optimization, and some statistics. Yes, so those four things you generally know some shape or form. And of course, those four things are quite essential to, or you can bridge the gap, so to speak, between machine learning and deep learning by going backwards to those ideas. So for example, you can start off with the equation of a straight line, y equals to mx plus c. You can expand that to multiple multivariate, multiple linear regression. You can expand that to perceptron theory, and then you can take multi-layer perceptrons, and there you go, deep learning neural network. Those are ideas you can bridge the whole gap between that. And this is what I was doing particularly in Oxford, and then I expanded that into a book / startup, which I'm happy to share with you afterwards about that as well. But that's the general idea. The general idea is that by the time you're 17 or 18 years old, if you are doing some kind of science or math degree, you know four things: linear algebra, statistics, optimization, and probability theory. Yes. So, and those four actually are quite, you can relate the whole AI spectrum to those four. That's the point. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And this is coming out at the end of this year?
Yes, there is a book will be coming out a bit later on. I've launched it as a small kind of a startup and a pilot program, which is going to be hopefully trialed out within a month or so. I can share something about that as well. I've never taught this subject online to anybody. That was the first thing. So I wanted to learn that a little bit more, because the historic audience I've taught to, there's two sides to it. I'm teaching this online to also some students who have autism as well, because there is a way of including people who come from an autistic background and they understand maths very well. So this is how this whole thing came along. So rather than publishing the book quite quickly, I'm sort of doing a small online thing first for 2 or 3 months before the book gets out.
Great.
Cool.
Thank you so much. We're really looking forward to hear more and learn more about it.
Yeah.
For Ayşe, I have a question. I would like to know, Ayşe, what was your biggest challenge being a woman, and what would you advise? What would be your top advice to women who are entering the AI field?
Yes. First of all, I studied in engineering. I had some knowledge about the maths and statistics, but when you study computer science, it make a difference in your AI career as well. So it was, in the beginning, it was challenge for me, for example, I just started to learn more about the logic of the math and logic of the statistic, why we are doing this, why do we need this, etc. And the other challenge was I started my AI career in London. So I just set up my life in London. Everything was new for me, new environments, new place, new country, new language. And I need to survive in London as well. But I kept myself always motivated. So I never felt that I can't do that. So motivation is very important. And also I forgot to say about the course, which one of the guests mentioned. If they take the course with a group of people or with a friend, it motivates them more and they learn from each other more. So I suggest these.
I totally agree with you on that. I've myself experienced that working as a group really motivates, and all of you have the same end goal, so you kind of support each other. So totally agree with you. Thank you, Ayşe. Ajit, we have one more question for you.
Yeah.
In the chat. Do you want me to read it out to you?
Oh yeah, okay, I can see that. Yes. So yes, if you please contact me, I will try to share what I can with that about that. Yes. So I think the question is about including students from India on the online thing. Yes. So please contact me on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect me. Just mention from that you're from the Women in Data group, and quite happy to connect with you on that. And then we can discuss from there. So yeah.
So I have another question. So I would like to know, Ajit and Ayşe, both of you, what is the most social impact that you've seen using AI, and where do you see that going? How can we make it more like AI for good, right?
Right. Okay. Yes. So I think that, so I'll go first. Yes. Or I should want to go first.
You should go first.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine. Okay, fine. So I think that AI has a lot of areas I think will make a big difference. I personally have, I mentioned this a couple of times for various personal reasons, but I have an interest in sort of looking at the psychology side of AI or the motivation side of AI. I mentioned this in autism context once. I also mentioned my PhD research is based on the idea of affective computing. Affective computing involves AI interpreting human emotion. Yes, so there's a long history for this subject. It's not an esoteric subject. It's not about kind of falling in love with a robot type of stuff. Yes, so this is about sort of the first paper for this was published by Rosalind Picard in '95. So it's more than 20 years old, and she talked about how AI can interpret emotion, and that's what I'm doing with my PhD research, which hopefully should be finishing up soon. And we are using those ideas to understand teaching as well. Yes, so especially online at the moment, that makes a big difference. But the same technology can be used for a different thing like post-traumatic stress disorder, for example, autism, people where people are rather reluctant talk about something which they feel very strongly about, or they are not able to express it fully with that. So this can be in healthcare and so many areas. So for me personally, that's the area I am working most about. It is exactly as we are talking about. It's a deep learning algorithm. It includes some NLP. It includes some emotion detection. So there is micro expressions, the theory of micro expressions, meaning that if you say something, there is a certain kind of expressions in your face which have a propensity to tell what your real emotion is. And I think that there is a lot of very interesting ways you can apply that for good. So this is my personal area of research in that. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Ajit. Ayşe, you want to give me your input on that?
Yep, I totally agree to Ajit, what he said. I just an experienced in Oxford course and in the work which we are working with Microsoft. We are implementing AI in various of fields. For example, in the Oxford course, I've seen the emotion, how we can implement AI in the emotion, how we can do computer vision reinforcement, and I've just made some notes while you're talking. And one of the things was very interesting for me. It was about the drug discovery. If I don't remember wrong, finding the duration of the drug discovery around 10 to 15 years, Ajit.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And if you do it these with AI algorithms, you can reduce the duration to 4 to 5 years. Again, if I don't remember wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is. I can see the field of the AI which we can implement it actually. Actually, we can think anything with AI.
Yeah. So
Currently,
I can add a. Sorry, go
yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I can add a little bit to this one because I have actually worked in this space before with one client. And the point about drug discovery and AI is that you effectively take protein molecules and try to predict something else. Yes. So historically, what you do is that if you AI is good at throwing out multiple permutations, combinations behind something. And what you still need to do, of course, is do the clinical trials behind it. However, AI is given a set of protein molecules, which you the same sort of thing. You can buy these protein databases. You can subscribe to them, and then you effectively build algorithms which predict potentially a cure for something. COVID is a classic example now because it's a totally unknown situation, but there are many possible combinations of drugs which could work, and that's how I think AI accelerates many of these processes by sort of reducing the scope of the potential permutations, combinations within that. And that I think is where it comes from. The reason I added a little bit to this one is because I worked on this prior to Ayşe joining feynlabs, basically. So yeah, cool.
Thank you so much, Ayşe and Ajit, both on that. I have another question in the chat.
Yeah.
Ajit, I would think that would be for you.
Yeah, we can both help you with this one. The only thing is because under 18, obviously we have to be a little bit more careful with this one. So I will give you my email address. And you also have Ayşe's email address as well. You can also CC, Ayşe can add her email address, or you can CC us, Kanchan. Yes, you can share Ayşe's email address as well. And then we are quite happy to help where we can in this case.
Like digital assistants to self-driving cars and so on. What areas and industries do you see the most growth and why?
Okay, so when we talk about growth, we are talking about something very real and now. Yes, so
Yep.
I believe that just like just like any other technology, financial services is one of the big drivers for growth in AI. So we are talking about purely growth areas where AI is is impacting or being used. And fintech obviously is a great way with that. I personally do not have that much experience in fintech other than fraud detection. The fraud detection is an anomaly detection problem. An anomaly detection problem is effectively an unsupervised learning problem, which we use in IoT, and therefore I got into fraud detection in that case. But I think that's where a lot of the sort of jobs are, so to speak. I think certainly being in New York and London, that helps as well. I think that, like we said, AI is used in every area. I have personally a lot of interest in healthcare. Outside of those two areas, we as feynlabs, meaning Ayşe and I, we are working on a few areas, some of which we already hinted on that. 5G is one of them. We are quite interestingly working on the new projects around 5G and AI. We are also working quite a bit in cybersecurity. Ayşe mentioned some of that work as well. I have worked in bioinformatics with that as well. So in my mind, I think that the current demand for AI is so large that at the moment people are not looking at vertical experience, meaning that if you can build an algorithm, then you are doing it, you're building it. I think over time people will gain experience in vertical domains, and that will be an important part going forward. So a few years from now, it'll be more important to have AI experience in healthcare, or AI experience in genomics or something like that. But at the moment, I think there's still a lot of demand, and there is just not enough people to fill it. So this is how I see the world from our side. Even from an employer side, you can tell you, even with COVID as well, I know somebody last week who's got a job, who has got a very significant pay jump from her previous job, and it is a woman, so I say her. And it's very interesting. I find that even in this current time, there is still a lot of people doing quite well with this stuff.
Great. Thank you so much for the inspirational story that you just told us. During the COVID times, I think everyone here is struggling right now, just to keep up with the day to day, and also finding a job is, of course, it's a great thing at this time. All right, so I think we are almost on time, so I'm going to go ahead and move to closing. So lastly, I would just like to thank you, Ajit and Ayşe, for joining us today. We really had a great session. I learned a lot, and I am inspired, and I hope a lot of our participants do feel the same way. Thank you to all our participants who joined us today. Feel free to connect with Ajit, Ayşe, myself, Sangeeta, and all of us on LinkedIn. Do join our Edison Women in Data group for more events, and you can reach out to us using email at edisonchapter@womenindata.com. Thank you so much once again. This was great, and I look forward to seeing you more. Thank you all.
Thank you all. Thank you, Kanchan, for inviting us.